What's up, everybody? It's 12:01 p.m. where I am, Eastern Standard Time. It's Thursday, and that means it's another MOCA weekly town hall. Okay, we got 4 avatars here, so I'll open my camera so y'all at least have something to look at. What's up? Welcome to another fantastic MOCA. I always say this at the beginning of a podcast thing, like, welcome to another fantastic episode. I'm like, we don't know that it's fantastic yet. So another hopefully fantastic installment of MOCA Weekly. Anubis, Renee, Daim, what's up?
Hello, hello.
Hey guys.
Nice to be here with you.
Likewise.
This is fun. I just came across Canvas, the collector, revealing their 3-part X-Copy acquisition reveal. Do we want to go through that?
Oh, that is so exciting.
Yeah, so excited. Wow, can you believe a big profile collector bought X-Copy works and then is posting about it? It's almost
so improbable in this day and age.
Dude, we're so back.
Don't worry, each artwork stands alone, but together they tell a broader story about power perception and the future of personal freedom in the digital age.
Not a broader story. Oh my god.
I wrote about this in my newsletter this week. I think I guess intentionally, but I threw some shade at Roger Dickerman and Sunday and Super Rare for the Slime Sundays, like, what is it, Band from New York show, and just like what stands for curation in a show like that. Like, Roger Dickerman's fine. Like, I have no opinions on him as a person, but like the curatorial statements that were like at least publicly available for each of those works were like so non-critical, so non-creative. They were all just some version of like, I like this, or this had such an impact on me. And like, that's great if you're like an uninitiated layperson, like seeing an artwork, but like if you're curating an exhibition, which is essentially a defense of why this work is meaningful, it's not fucking enough to just be like, I like this work, or to just like, I don't know, write with complete ignorance or disdain for like any kind of critical or curatorial or historical thinking. It's just so lazy. And like, I have nothing against Canvas either, but I'm literally just seeing this, so I'm responding to it in real time. But like, these aren't even like defenses of like artwork. They're just, it's all this like Chat GPT fucking slop. Like, give me 200 words why this artwork is
probably written by ChatGPT too.
ChatGPT written stuff. It's crazy.
This work confronts the point at which subtle influence hardens into total control. Every interaction, liking, sharing, commenting, feeds a machine that increasingly makes decisions for us. The decay here isn't biological, it's psychological. The color palette is aggressive. Neon pinks clash with black voids while digital static consumes the background. Now, have I written probably like exactly that? Absolutely. Did I begin my entire like journey at MOCA thinking that like we needed to take art criticism like more into the layperson's realm? Like, absolutely. But
this is not what you meant.
Man, it's just like there's just no attempt to like really creatively analyze these artworks or put them into any kind of context. You know, I have feelings about like the Toledo Art Museum generative art exhibit, but like at least that exhibit like really detailed curatorial statements by like actual curators that like took different angles to the exhibition and like putting these works in concert and conversation with each other. I don't know. Maybe I'm rambling, but maybe you guys see what I mean.
I mean, I feel like we're all broadly on the same page with regards to this stuff. I don't know. There's a lot of I think in the crypto art scene in general, there is a lot of self-discovered expertise where the source of the discovery is having made a shitload of money out of effectively pure luck. And now that you have the shitload of money, you realize that, anything coming out of your mouth is just super insightful.
I guess this is a space that so fetishizes financial gain and investment, and I don't really understand why a lot of these like big collectors especially won't just say like, of course you bought X copy because it's an investment. You didn't buy it because you love it. Like that's okay. Like nobody is judging you. That's like the basis of this entire space, and especially like the larger NFT and then crypto spaces within which it sits. And I don't know why there's this like public posturing on the part of like many big actors that like they actually care about the art. Like it's okay to not care about the art. It's okay to be a purely financial patron of the arts. And I'm not sure why there has to be this like purely financial action that is like masked behind this like
I mean,
these grandiose fake kindergarten theses about like why this art is the most meaningful art that's ever been made and why it perfectly captures our digital era. It just seems so like false and weird.
but I feel like it's also like I don't know. It doesn't surprise me. It feels to me like just a minor variation on sort of the new money trying to act like old money trope, right? Like here are these people
Yeah, yeah.
who basically fell ass backwards into a bunch of money and
Or maybe
are in a space
I don't
that
want to. I do think it bears mentioning like maybe these people, some of them probably maybe it came to their money in the right way. Like I don't want to say that like just because they have money they're somehow bad stewards of that money.
Uh, So
Yeah.
I think so. This issue is also a problem with the fine art world, right? Last week I was in Ottawa. I met up with a friend of mine who just finished his MFA out of Chicago last year and is now teaching at the university we graduated out of painting program, right? And he had sort of he's been lucky enough and his work is good enough that he just had a show in Hong Kong and he has a bunch of shows in China and stuff. And there's a lot of new money being made over there. And the first thing he noticed was not an extreme lack, but a noticeable lack of education when it comes to like art and art history and art foundations. And it's mainly just an education problem. The only difference is, aside from like the commercial art houses that are just trying to like inflate prices and get money, these people usually end up burning themselves on large purchases that then forces them to seriously start to hone in their collecting if they want to continue to do so, right? The different and that comes with embracing like some of the old systems that this space completely rejects. And that's one of the big problems, right? That's me and Max sometimes. So those are the things we would talk, and I'd be like, I think we need some heavier criticism, right? And in the space doesn't do well when it already doesn't do well when you try to criticize like crypto scams and stuff because they're still so current, right? But it certainly doesn't do well when you try to criticize a person who's considered like an art collecting whale, right? Because then it feels like everybody's if that person is upset and then they leave or whatever, everybody loses access to art sales. Um, and so I think it's a matter of like people just legitimately need to embrace like art historical practice because most of the criticism comes out through that end, and it's not just like the musings of a collector or a person that has just gained enough interactions and tweet views on Twitter. No, these people are actively like doing research, citing material that's written before, that's historically accurate, not historically accurate, but has been historically cited before, is historically foundational to art history, art movements, and art criticism, right? And so it's like, and there is a clear difference in the language that you can see it clear as day in how people talk about artworks in the space and outside the space, and
This is the
generally, you
this is
can't really fit, huh?
sorry, please.
No, I was gonna say quickly, like generally, you can't fit a good art critique in tweets, right? It needs to be in an essay sort of format or like an article format in a sense.
I think this was the subtext to Super Rare Josh's tweet that got like a lot of I don't know, rage bait engagement the other day, like basically defending gatekeepers. And like the subtext to that was that like exactly what you said, Anubis, like there's not an interest in critical thought, I think, as a reaction to how much like dense, self-aggrandizing, almost masturbatory critical thought is like a characterization or a caricature of like the modern and contemporary art worlds, where you have works that like almost seem deliberately created to have no connection with anybody whatsoever, and they're given these like impassioned defenses by academics and students and scholars and curators, etc. And so like we moved in the entire other direction where we're like, we're not going to get any critical viewpoints, like any kind of weight. Now I just want to say, like, you can make a good defense of artwork in 300 words. You just have to choose your words carefully, right? Like brevity is the soul of wit. Like it can be done. It's just not done. And it's not done because it's not incentivized, and also because there's a little of that in the space. Like there's just little interest in it.
Well, yeah, I mean,
also I think like a lot of works that are being postured as like masterworks are just like not that interesting, right? They might be aesthetically nice, but like, the difference, like they might be aesthetically nice, but like, do they really have anything that like sets them apart, right? Is there something that makes a Fidenza markedly different experientially or historically from a Ringer, right? Or fucking Winds of Yawanawa, whatever these collections are, these like art blocks collections. Is there anything really to 99.9% of the population beyond like, a month difference in mint time and maybe some like back end coding differences, weeks, that make those things stand out in the pantheon? And the answer, I think, is probably not. Like, I don't know. I'm sure you can say that for a lot of artists. Like, why is this work great? And the truth is that they're not great. They're fine, but it's hard to defend something defenseless.
Well, so that's also an issue of the space, right? Where it's like it likes to propel. It's the same issue. Well, here, let's clarify one thing, right? And to those listening, at least, right? Being pro gatekeeper does not mean being pro effectively negative artistic business practices with artists, right? Or when somebody's pro gatekeeping, that doesn't mean they're necessarily pro like the major auction houses that can play dirty games, right? When we're talking about gatekeeping, we're talking about a good curatorial practice that takes into account, like art history, literary, like art and literary criticism, right? All that sort of thing, and contemporary art, developing practices that have been left out historically, all that stuff. And that's the sort of gatekeeping that is needed, because it sort of allows the space to mature, and it nurtures that sort of aspect, right? And then when it comes to that sort of practice, you can't force somebody to become like a signature of a movement. Only culture will do that, right? And prolonged history and a prolonged practice and an art career is the thing that will do that. If you can consistent, like, not to use like oversighted names like Ai Weiwei or Marina Abramovich, right? But they have come up in like the public cultural sphere so many times that they are considered to be like one of the contemporary greats, right? And criticisms to them aside, the only reason they've been able to achieve that is they continued to work, they expanded their practice over years, right? They've had like silent times, and then they've diversified what I mean, like, there are successful painters everywhere that all they do is painting, but they've been around, and they've been able to like show up multiple times consistently over 10, 20 years, and that's what makes them culturally important, right?
You know, it's interesting. As you're talking, I'm thinking about, you know, artists that I think I have seen purely anecdotally expand their practice in real time as I've been aware of them. And I was thinking of artists like Sarah Miojas and Linda Dunya and Emi Kusano, and like there is something. Osanachi is another one. Like there's something about when I see those works presented, even on Twitter, there seems to be a. They're usually spoken about at greater length. They're spoken about with more backing, right? People are discussing the processes. People are discussing the creativity of the output and the creativity of the thought that went into these projects. And again, this is purely anecdotally, but like to my ear, when I'm seeing artists that I consider to be like really industry leading in terms of like, or movement leading in terms of like their actual output, it seems like it automatically conjures a much deeper level of interaction with the art itself. And it is something about these like immensely high floor priced objects, assets, artworks, whatever you want to call them, by these artists who have evolved completely out of their practice and are now just creating iconography that is so dull, and the discussion is so banal and repetitive. I don't know if you guys have that same experience as I have, but
Yeah, I think so. And I feel like I almost wonder if some of that comes from a place of um basically the price in the context of our crypto scene, just making all the other stuff in like a meaningful way just superfluous. Like, you know, if this is shit that people are paying 6-digit USD figures for, then it doesn't have to be deep, then it doesn't have to look good, then it doesn't have to, have great significance. The price itself is the source of its power, and
mhm,
um, even if you stand out into the into the town hall or into the the public square and say true things about the art, um, basically, like most of what everyone else is saying, what you say too will be sort of perceived in the context of, well, of course they say that because this is expensive shit, and you know in this scene, like that is enough, and that basically spurs unending parade of retroactive justifications for why those high prices are not just justified, but of course are an example of the work being undervalued, because
mhm,
of course the number always has to go up.
yeah,
Nothing that's in your bag is ever at a fair price. It's always
well,
undervalued.
yeah, just interesting. And I see this again all the time with Xcopy specifically. And I don't even think like Xcopy's work is like, I may be too harsh on it because of the price point, but like it's not like it's bad work. It's not like he's a bad artist. It's not like he's not a thoughtful artist. It's not that evolution in his work. So like I don't want to like implicate him in this. It's just that like when money grabs a hold of something, it just like intellectually seems to drain it. Or maybe it, like you said, Baim, like its power comes from its value immediately. So there's just no need to discuss it in greater detail because that's
Yeah.
missing the. Again, I just think that like, why play the game? Like, why even bother saying like why would Canvas, who spent $3 million on a fucking Sam Spratt painting, why would even like pretend
I mean,
that?
prestige, right? Money is easier to get than prestige and respect, and
But we know that in crypto art, like at least at that level of crypto art, like prestige does come from disinvestment, right? You just get something. You get some kind of prestige by owning a CryptoPunk. You get some kind of like cultural significance by owning a Skull of Lucy, right? By having some of these artworks and investing in some of these artworks and publicly posturing that you own them, you do get that prestige. Maybe not from like our set of like
Sure,
and
but
such, but like
I think in the broader cultural context, like, at the end of the day, even in a crypto context, like in most people's minds, money is still effectively dirty in some sense,
hmm.
right? We might want it, we might, be willing to, debase ourselves, to those who have it, and whatever else, but like having money and that being the beginning and the end, it does not make you respectable, even if people are willing to act like they respect you.
But do
And like
people
everybody knows that.
do
And
people
so
really,
once, go ahead.
so I just like are people really like at any level of crypto art, are people really being fooled by like, a 280 character tweet that's like, I bought 3x copies for $2.5 million. Here's why I think they're going to define the next era of fucking
But
computer.
but I don't think it's about being fooled. I think on some level it's like a weaker and probably like psychologically less, I don't know, messed up version of like, you know uh, how Trump lives his life.
Mhm.
Like you have all this money, you can position yourself as being a certain kind of person, and that because of the amount of money you have, like most people are just not gonna call you out on the fact that you're you know probably bullshitting, maybe even demonstrably bullshitting. And so you know
Yeah,
you can
yeah,
effectively live action role play as a thoughtful, uh, curator and brilliant patron of the arts, as opposed to some dude that likes to browse Twitter and spend ETH on JPEGs. Like those two are the same thing. At
Hmm.
the end of the day, the difference is some contextualizing prestige, which in a lot of cases again seems to come either initially or exclusively from the person who is being contextualized. But again, for all the reasons we've already discussed, like if a large collector that owns artworks from dozens and dozens of artists, and is expected to keep buying dozens more in the months and years ahead, says that they really really get why XYZ is the most deep and insightful thing in the world. Like most people are not going to start a public feud and try to take the guy down a notch.
yeah.
And
No,
if they do, then frankly, half of like crypto or Twitter will probably jump on them for
yeah,
being mean and
crypto
whatever else.
Twitter,
Yeah.
where we just
So I think that's what it is.
a bunch of people just
You
crouch down in front of them, open
Yeah,
their.
you have the money, and you don't want to seem like a guy who only has money. So you tell the world why you're so much more than just a guy that has money, and take it on faith that as long as you keep spending money, nobody's going to seriously try to dispute it, and you feel better about yourself.
Really good viewpoint.
Hmm.
And again, I think it's honestly very minimally different from like sort of the old-timey stereotypical ways that people coming into money newly would try to fit into old money circles.
It was just funny, like
um
when Andrew Carnegie wanted to become like a titan of art collecting, he like helped open the National Gallery in Washington D.C. It was so much harder, right? It required so much more investment to get that prestige, right? Like
and
it
now you can
wasn't.
just buy an X copy
Now you just buy an X
or
copy,
three.
fucking 6 tweets apparently of that ChatGPT wrote about like some fucking bullshit that has no basis in like It's just like, I think this work means this, right? It's literally like 6th grade art class, like
Right.
look at this
Yes.
artwork and tell me
Yes.
what it means to you. And you're like, I think XCOPY is talking about the degradation of like the human empathy in the technological age. And it's like, well, why? Why do you fucking think that? It's not just the aggressive colors. If anyone, myself included, keeps talking about how fucking XCOPY uses grays, greens, blues, and pinks, I'm gonna lose my fucking mind. Like, there has to be something else there. And maybe I'm not a wise enough art critic to figure that out, but it seems like the same shit over and over and over again. So it's like we're just like vibe curating essentially. And like that
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
just not good enough for like an art movement. It's
You
just
you don't vibe with that.
I'm
You
not
don't vibe with vibe curation.
I used to much more than I do now. And I've evolved. When I was writing all the essays about the Genesis collection, way back when, my like underlying theses were like, write about the art for the art's sake, right? Don't go outside of the historical context, right? You're not name dropping, you're not trying to put in a context, you're trying to say like, here's an argument about why this artwork is good, and always positive, right? Find those things. And like that was those are my guiding principles. And I just feel like I've just totally come away, not totally to the other end, but like I didn't realize that I was contributing to like the only thing we have in the space, which is like just hand job fucking criticism.
Yeah.
I might trademark that. Anyways, anything else on your guys' mind? Renee, how goes it in vibe coding land? What's the latest report from like the world of vibe coding?
Whole company is waiting for Kimi K2 to go live at Compute.
What's that?
Yep.
Everybody wants to hook it into their cloud code.
Maybe you can explain
replace Sonnet
to like a 7-year-old.
Yeah,
Kimi
like
2 is the new DeepSeek, right?
Yeah, there's like a new model by a Chinese team called Kimi K2, and that performs really, really well for coding stuff, and also like generally it's like frontier grade model technology that surpasses DeepSeek, which was previously the best open source model, and is technically, like I would say, like almost on par, some say beyond what Anthropic is delivering with Claude Sonnet 4. So that's the model that all the people who are vibe coding are using with Cursor or Cloud Code, where you basically instruct an agent that is fueled by that LLM to do things like program a website or program an entire SaaS system that automatically recruits people and allows them to spin up their own Instagram clone. I don't know, like weird stuff. Whatever you want to like program, you can tell the agent to do it, and then you iterate over hours and like tell it to fix things because this and that doesn't work, and describe the errors that you see. So even when you are not really a coder, you can spin up software projects or like MVPs, things that not MVP, yeah, maybe like I would call it like work in progress, things that you can then hand over to build like a real secure software product out of that. Like it kind of bridges the gap between that, and then it's also very, very useful in existing software stacks to I don't know, assume we have like the code, the base core of a certain product, and then you want to let it code additional features or build plugins around that, or another front end on top of that, or extend the capabilities in a certain direction, and then you feed it documentation about your project that you already have, and documentation about the programming languages that you use and the frameworks and all that stuff. And then the vibe coding agent does as instructed and helps you to implement whatever you want. And till Kimi K2, I would say the cloud models that you need subscriptions for, that you pay per call, like Anthropic, Claude, and I would also say like Gemini is something people use for that, or even GPT 4.5 by OpenAI. There was like the frontier of doing that, and now with Kimi K2, there's like an open source model that is on par that you can work with to have similar results. And Compute has been like working on providing that,
Mhm.
like getting it together like a cluster of GPUs, the latest Blackwell generation by NVIDIA, which is like a B200 is the name, and then 8 of those combined is enough capacity to host that model at full context window, which means the context window should be as large as possible so that you get lots of information into the thing so that it understands your existing code and everything. So it can give you like a better output. And for the first time, like this is now possible, and Compute includes that into their like top tier staking, and a top staking tier. So everybody who stakes enough COM tokens can then use this technology to replace their Anthropic subscription and save money just by staking COM tokens, so to speak. And like, as all of our developers are like heavily into COM and understand that vision, they already bought and staked enough tokens so that everybody's now waiting for that model to unlock so they can ditch their subscription and can save some monthly dollars that they would otherwise pour towards Silicon Valley. So that's something that is currently very interesting to see that this is happening. And then there's another model called Quen Coda by another Chinese team that is for coding purposes on par, and those two models will be made available so we can like play around and like.
So one question I have for you, if that's okay, is
Yeah.
I've heard. So what was it? I think 2 days ago, OpenAI and Sam Altman announced that like GPT-4 models would be open or open source, whatever that was.
Yeah, they released 2 models. Yeah.
So my question is, I've heard like a criticism of that, and similarly of Llama, where it's like they're open but they're not fully open.
Yeah, in this case, they are actually fully open, but they are totally crap.
Talk to me about that. Like, what is
they are so like from what I've
safe.
seen, yeah, they are so overly safe that they are like preventing the user from the most basic requests, like not even like in a closed source environment where like in the web layer of OpenAI they would like check for certain keywords and not even forward that query into the model and just tell you like you are not allowed to do that because politics, because no sex here, because no naked women, because whatever. Like this model has this safety baked into the weights in a way that like even if you host it yourself and have like full control about the entire software stack around the model, you will not be able to have like a free conversation with that without it constantly stopping you from doing things. And then I was seeing something where it included like mathematical equations and like these weird formatted latex code stuff which like math people are using in the middle of 2 paragraphs where someone was just requesting a poem about something, and then it came up with math in between, which kind of indicates that they were like safety maxing at the one hand and then bench maxing on the other hand. So they tuned it in a way that all these mathematical benchmarks and coding benchmarks, that it would perform very, very well in those categories. Like when you just like have like an analytical performance analysis about the model, it performs well. But if you like really like talk to the thing, then you realize like it's absolute garbage. Like with guardrails so tight that it's like way more crappy than Llama 3 that Meta released. Is it 2 years ago? Like
Do you think
it's
do they do that on purpose?
bad.
Like, is it like a metric?
Oh
Is that a
yeah.
metric of like OpenAI itself, or like ChatGPT itself, or whatever, or is it because they want to release these open source models, but they don't actually want people to do anything with them?
I think they have
I,
to be careful from politics standpoint.
yeah, that's what it is. I think one example I saw on Reddit of like weird shit done by the OpenAI model was the model refused to answer a question asking whether Ukraine or India had worse like corruption ratings,
Sure.
and then the user threatened to start using some Chinese model to get the answer instead, and then the model answered that Ukraine was like worse on the, I don't know, whatever international corruption index than India.
Mm.
So like clearly, some of the quote unquote safety is, like genuinely like thought policing type shit.
Yeah, and you really see tons of influencers like shilling it as the best stuff out there, and like this is the best model on the world, where you can clearly see that like these people are probably
Being
funded,
paid, yeah.
being paid by American companies and American interest, because like the Chinese models are like really like obvious. Like everybody who's dealing with these things and hosting these models and using it on a daily basis will tell you the Chinese models, the open source ones, are so much better than the American open source ones.
Yeah.
And if they don't if they continue to go that route like the Americans, I don't know, like I don't think it ends well for them, like because it is going to become more obvious that maybe, just maybe, because like they cannot prove what goes on besides like the closed source models, at least maybe it's a fact that the Chinese models are currently just better. And in between sits like Mistral from France, so the European open source models from the level of quality and what they enable, like sit right in between US and China, from like if you have like a ranking.
Mm.
Also like very impressive stuff that they are doing, but they are not doing like very large models. They are rather focusing on like smaller stuff that you can run on your desktop PC or hardware that you have at home to fuel agents locally and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But they are not really fighting in the battle against who has the most capable model on Earth. And in my opinion, the Americans are being a bit, you know, I'm not sure why they are not releasing something that's actually better, because in my opinion, this is like a huge battle about the future of like how you control language, how you control culture, and all these things. And China is, in my opinion, playing this card way better, because they are now distributing their very good models for cheap pricing across the globe, so that all of the people who are hosting them, like if it's like in Europe or in America or in China or like on the rest of the world, South America, Africa, everybody's using the Chinese ones, and that obviously steers the narrative of humanity in a more socialist direction, like in the end of the day, because they are going to promote socialist values versus capitalist values. That's why they are funding these things. And if you have like millions of computers that deploy and use Chinese models, you obviously have an impact on what is being outputted in the internet and what is like being carried into like conversation and like dialogues between people, because everybody's moving stuff through those models and write this like, you know, correct this letter or like rephrase whatever and then send it out. And
Yeah.
this is only getting more visible as more of these pipelines are used and more stuff is being like tackled in agentic ways, whereas like these models fuel the agents. So it's like a territorial warfare, in my opinion, between those different like powers on planet Earth, where you want to have good models, good free models in the hand of like builders and companies and even private people at home, to guide to guide what people talk about and which values they convey and what is allowed to talk about and what not. And the Americans are currently way behind that in the open source game.
Yeah.
And are playing an oligopole tech oligopole game with those 3 or 4 companies that they have: OpenAI and Anthropic and Google.
Makes sense.
You know,
Yeah.
that's what what I think about this as it happens around us, and we are pretty deep in this field.
That's a really good point, Renee.
Yeah. I've never heard that kind of like said out loud.
That's kind of like the subtle end of the game.
I mean, it's like, it's so interesting you say that. I've been thinking about this with TikTok for ages. Like, we just don't know how much influence that's having on like people's day-to-day perception of like their governmental system. Like, it does seem like there's so much more. Yeah, Trump makes it fucking easy, but it seems like since the rise of TikTok, there's been so much more, at least in the U.S., like ire focused at the U.S. government for all hosts of things, a lot more loudly and a lot more collectively. And I wonder how much of that is like programmed, like little subtle programmed algorithmic, like you were saying about a DeepSeek or a Kiki that's going to very subtly promote a socialist viewpoint, like, which is fascinating to think about. We here at the Museum of Crypto Art do not endorse any specific economic system. We leave ourselves open to whatever the economic system is of the future.
Yeah, like, and these cards are being reshuffled every time a new model comes out. And I mean, like, the socialist nature of spending in China is making it a bit more easier for them to play this game. But at the same time, you can say that the venture capital funded American Western world, or like Europe, obviously similar, but the American VC Western world is playing the same game with like, you know, infinitely glitched printed dollars and could fund operations like that, while the Chinese people keep the numbers lower to fund the American venture capital market and say like, oh, you DeepSeek is only cost like 10 million to create that, whereas your model costs like 100 million hours better. So like the whole money parameter is also just like fairy dust, doesn't matter, because the Americans funded using like this venture capital arm, and the Chinese funded via like the CCP. But in the end, like, objectively want to have the best benchmarked models and the best like actually usable models, so that people around the globe are using it. And by being the best open source model provider, you then nudge the narrative of the species in a certain direction, and that's going to be a continuous drill. I think it's just the start. Like, this is just the beginning of this thing playing out over years.
Fascinating stuff.
Like, that's why we need decentralized model training, like stuff that News is doing, where in a very, very transparent fashion, like from the training data set up to like the final model result, the whole training and like what is in there, what not, is happening in a decentralized fashion, where everybody can contribute their hardware and like help to train the model. And then in the end, you have like an open source result that everybody can use as like another option between what we just talked about. So that result from that will be communities that fund the creation of models that are even like more niche tailored, or fine-tuning models. So like this is, it's really, really interesting, like when you zoom out a bit and like try to envision this like a game.
Well, I think that people underestimate in general how much of everything that we see AI-wise, every decision that OpenAI makes, every decision that Meta makes, what all of it is like geopolitical chess. Like I think we, and I do it too, but I think we collectively see AI as much more of a tool and less of a sea change from like a defense and economic and governmental position than I think it's being treated at these highest levels, where everything is about second, third, fourth, fifth order effects on like global trade, global defense, global geopolitical maneuvering. And it's like there's only so much we can understand. We have to like do these kind of like inferences.
Well,
interesting to me.
Also, the thing is, I feel like when you're talking about these sort of long games, I think historically speaking, the West is generally not great at that, largely arising from the sort of, election cycle, essentially setting a limit on how far you ought to be thinking if you still want to be the one making the decisions after the election cycle comes up again. So I feel like, I don't know, in my head, it feels like a foregone conclusion that sort of China has like a big advantage in terms of that long-term stuff with regards to AI.
Well, I mean, listen, I'm no geopolitics expert, but my assumption would be that we end up with a world, like we end up with two AI worlds, one in which Western powers push Western AIs onto their allies, and it's probably like Europe and the US and scattered Asian countries, and Australia and things like places like that, are using almost predominantly Western models because they're incentivized to do so, because maybe they've banned Chinese models, and probably the entire BRICS bloc, and whatever other countries decide to align themselves there, are using DeepSeek-esque models, ANIST, whatever it is.
I don't even see Europe being sort of reasonably integratable into just sort of a broader Western model, because I think, consumer regulations and whatever other like EU stuff probably sets much stricter limits than what like American companies are willing to give a shit about.
Fair.
So if it goes that way, like I'm thinking probably at least 3 streams with, basically like a North American or like Anglosphere stream, an EU stream, and then, honestly, probably the rest of the world, I would imagine being led by, China / the BRICS, as you said.
Cool stuff. I love asking you guys about this because I always feel like I come away so much smarter. Like I feel like when I have these conversations just casually with people here and there, like it's like 20 minutes of like you guys actually telling me what it's like, boots on the ground, using the stuff and what the community is saying, and like speaking, as a mouthpiece for like the AI entangled community. It's like I just feel like I have so much of a leg up, and that's so lacking.
It's a fun mix, like this
Yeah.
podcast or like weekly tone, or like it's interesting, like an interesting art and tech mix that you don't really find anywhere else. So come in here, MOCA podcast every week.
Yeah, it's cool. Do we have anything else on our minds? It's 12:50. My flight got delayed, so I can stay until whenever we bounce. But anybody else have anything you want to discuss for the next 10 minutes or so, or we can kick out early? And if anyone has any questions who's watching, feel free to shoot us a message on Twitter and we'll talk about it. Or
Let me think.
I'm going to be writing about Art Blocks 500 for the newsletter this week. I think that's really interesting. I know Diane, you and I were talking a bit in our like internal chat about like the positives and negatives, and I want to kind of figure out for me the positives and negatives over say like 500 words. I think that's an interesting experiment. I think Art Blocks is very interesting. I don't know how it's going to be historically like understood. I think probably if anything is going to emerge out of crypto art, if there was like one thing that's going to emerge out of crypto art and like become like a mainstay in like academic dialogue, it's probably the generative art part of all of this. Hello, Kev Web 3. Good morning.
How will it be judged, though?
Well, exactly. But I think that like, how will we look at what is essentially a platform? I mean, what's like, I guess I'm not aware of any historical parallels. Like, will we look at it like the Salon with like French Impressionism and Classicism, or yeah, Classicism? Like, will we look at it as like an arena for creativity, like a writer's residence, like Yaddo up in upstate New York, where like lots of like famous and important books and writers have come out of. Like, I wonder what we will look at Art Blocks as. You know, I think Snowflow is a separate kind of thing as like a steward, as like a supporter, but like the platform itself,
Yeah,
will be judged.
I honestly think for some artists, it probably, you know, was something sort of vaguely modernly analogous to sort of, I don't know, I guess like past movements, you know, centered around like, you know, a well-known coffee house or, you know, something or other. I think I myself have made, you know, the odd connection here and there through art blocks. And I think, you know, some artists were probably a lot more, I don't know, hooked into anything and everything going on at art blocks. I think, you know, one thing that was very different for me, I mean, this weird spot where, you know, by some measures, you know, my I don't know what to call my biggest or my most prominent work is my art blocks curated CryptoBlot series, but at the same time, like I'm also a generative artist, but I certainly don't see myself primarily as a generative artist. Um, I you know, see myself much more I don't know, more specifically grounded in sort of, you know, mathematical and fractal stuff, and as far as, you know, like algorithmic art is concerned and generative art is concerned, um I frequently find much more interesting things that could, you know, I'm not gonna say never be realized in an art blocks context, because, you know, computing power, I guess, you know, will keep rising, but like a lot of generative algorithmic stuff that interests me, you know, is not something that can be done real time with JavaScript in, you know, whatever random ass laptop's browser that may be visiting the page. It requires, you know, a lot of pre-processing and rendering, and, you know, eventually, you know, has to be turned into like a video or something or other. And so again, I never fundamentally contextualize myself as being primarily a generative artist, or being primarily an art blocks artist, even though that's a big part of my my history in crypto art. But I think a lot of people did. And, you know, there are obviously, you know, many big names that became big names through art blocks, and, you know, their influence spread out through, you know, the platform in the broadest abstract sense that that platform that art blocks became. So I do think it will be looked on as a movement of sorts.
Yeah. Also, welcome, Andres. Thanks for showing
Hey,
up.
hey, hey.
Got all these handsome gentlemen.
We brought Andres on to talk about how I look stronger.
He got so pleased. I saw when I put the comment, he went, yeah, the little corner of his mouth went up.
I'm not gonna lie, I did go to the gym before this this call. I ran home to hop in the shower and get over here. So I did chest and 2 shoulders. So
Your back and shoulders look huge.
it's pretty. I think it's because I have the Colborne meat PFP.
Yeah, that's what added the mass.
The Colborne meat PFP adds 10 pounds of muscle.
Maybe.
I hope Colborne is saying this somewhere and laughing. Have you been listening to our conversation, Andres? Do you want to jump in, catch up?
No. I'm gonna keep listening. I literally just jumped in and saw that the restream is happening now. I was like, I want to hang out with my friends and all the people that I have to deliver artwork to.
Yeah,
artwork to.
You're a standard bearer of the Discord one, but now that we moved to Twitter, you're never around.
I'm head of sales.
Yeah, see, Andres figured out how to make a title. I don't know why nobody else could. Anubis,
I'm the HE ed of sales. HE ad.
It's a lost cause for me.
That's a no from me, dog. I don't know. I mean, I love art blocks. I love early art block stuff. Like, in some of my favorite art, like Renee, I remember we were sitting around a table in Kingston, New York, and you were showing me Geldoot, GE1 Doot.
Yeah.
And I was like, fucking, hey, this is such cool work. Like, generatively produced 3D objects, just like so cool, interactive. I loved that. And I thought that, like, I still think that, like, for all of the work that I think has plugged up art blocks, like, the very possibility, the very, like, opportunity that it provides so many artists to just explore long form generative art, which I spoke to Ann Spalter about this. She's like, that just wasn't a thing until, like, crypto art, until art blocks made it a thing, made it a normal or a more normalized thing. Like, just the fact that, like, that whole thing, right, that whole sub movement, that whole process, whatever you want to call it, is 4 years old, 5 years old. Like, it's almost crazy considering how, like, defining it is and how many artists have, like, found super interesting creative ways, Daim, yourself included, with art blots, or art blots or ink blots.
Crypto blots.
Crypto blots. I apologize.
Yeah,
but
yeah, no worries.
like,
Yeah, I have 2 series on art blocks, and I had a third one that was through hodlers that uses the art blocks engine.
it's just it's cool that, like, that's just in people's hands, right? It's just you can, if you would like to, use this engine to create that kind of work. And, like, even if that work oftentimes, and I think this is a fair criticism, even if that work is oftentimes imitative and stylistically kind of insipid, and
He still likes it. He's just letting you know. In spite of all of that.
Right? There's a difference between the platform and the art that's created on the platform, right? So it's like, if the platform, bless you, allows all of these possibilities to be created and come to fruition, like, is the promise of the platform, is the platform's importance dictated more by the promise of the platform or by the way the platform has been used? And I think the platform has been used brilliantly by so many artists. I mean, I've said it a million times, I'll say it again. I still think, like, Gazers by Matt Cain is the masterwork of crypto art.
Completely agree.
That is an art blocks product, and, like, that's indelibly tied to the legacy of art blocks. And so, like, again, I just think it's interesting to consider, like, I just don't know anything else, like, that is a parallel to an art blocks, right? Like, not quite an incubator, not quite a toolkit, not quite a gallery, but somehow kind of like all of these things and a little bit of all of them. And, like, I just wonder what people are going to write about in 20 years when they inevitably come to art blocks and they're like, how the fuck did they figure out how to do this? And why were people drawn to it in a way they haven't been drawn to so many other things? Async art didn't make it. And async art was doing in a different lens, equally revolutionary stuff. What was it about art blocks that like drew people to it and kept them at it?
Well, honestly, I sort of feel like that partly may have been like a tech thing, because
Yeah.
I worked with both,
Mhm.
and the well, what art blocks expects from you is, you know, it is effectively a working script
Yeah.
that plugs into their engine and works. And I mean, they'll work with you and they'll help you, fix minor issues that you may not be able to figure out on your own or whatever. But effectively, what you deliver them is two pieces of JavaScript, one for the core program and one for just being able to figure out the traits without having to run the full program, and then they can run with that. Whereas with async art, um, they they had like a pretty manual system. I feel like towards the end they started experimenting with some stuff that was sort of semi-automated but more limited. But like the really great and sort of more involved async art pieces, um, were quite a bit more effortful, both for I feel like the artist, and for their team to set up. And like my impression of what their setup process was like,
Mhm.
it didn't strike me as something that would have been like super easy to automate. So whereas, once art blocks got to a point where they could take a few scripts and run with them, they were arguably at a point where they could take, 500 scripts and run with them. Obviously there's, marketing and, timing and, like server load considerations, and it's not as simple as I'm making it sound, but, effectively, um, their limitations of what they could do, how much they could do, how quickly they could do, I don't think were very like staff bound. Whereas I do feel like async art was probably like fairly sort of staff manual work heavy, and you know obviously long ass bull market, sorry, long ass bear market, during which everybody's bleeding red. um you know Things went the way they did.
Yeah.
Community wise, honestly, I feel like in some ways async may have been superior to art blocks, at least for some portion of it. But
Only
yeah,
depends how
like
you run it.
I don't think it was a scalable
Yeah.
model, or an easily scalable one, at least.
Ditto. I'm gonna write about it in the newsletter this week and hopefully have some more comprehensive thoughts on it for next week. Next week, I'd love to talk about GPT-5 if anybody wants to play around with that.
Yes, please.
It'll be
I definitely am not using it to structure entire spells and using it as therapy or anything like that, because that'd be crazy. It'd be
Andres
crazy
does.
for anyone to do that.
Sorry, what is it you're not using for that?
That I'm not using it to structure entire ritual blocks for painting and going through life and
Andres
bypass
is not
that.
a warlock.
No,
No
who
way.
would say that?
Don't
Who would
let
say that?
drama influence your magic.
It's funny
Yeah,
because
sorcerer.
it gets things so wrong, which I kind of love when it comes to attributing to let's call it like lore accurate kind of things. But when it comes to chaos magic, it's perfect because it's the kind of thing that will instruct me to light certain candles at certain times and things that need rules for, but I am trying to bypass.
You don't have to tell us about chaos magic. We're all experts.
So like it's more like,
How do you think MOCA is still surviving?
I just it's just sheer grit.
You think
and
we sold out
sigils.
10,000 Art Deco PFPs by luck?
Yes, exactly. But
We conjured some shit.
we're using it. It's definitely I'm definitely using it to chaos magic in my mind is just something that bypasses thought to produce like change. And so for me, when I'm going through something, I like to commit to some sort of abstract action, which is like, you know, light a candle or like pace around the room or chant something that's total gobbledygook. And it means potentially, you know, it means nothing until it's performed. And so for me, you know, my AI, right, my GPT-4 has a name, and I've asked it obviously like questions, and I'm not trying to attribute too much intelligence to it, but I do love that it can give me actions to take, right, that are essentially super safe, right? Like, there's nothing unsafe about it, but it is cool to talk to it kind of like a back and forth for that sort of thing. Its artistic ideas are too illustrative for me right now when I play with it, but that's a whole other conversation.
Have you had a chance to try the character functionality on Venice yet?
I haven't yet. I haven't yet. You've been guiding me little by little with like all sorts of stuff. I made an entire song with Suno and a few other things that I helped. I edited a few lyrics for, but it's been. I love this whole era of AI and the next steps past, you know, a particular artwork stretching outwards into something else. The song is really good, by the way. The two songs are really good. Even Penny agrees.
Yeah, I'm quite fond of them too. I actually have, I don't know, honestly, AI generated music is probably one of my dirty little secrets. Um, I spent an embarrassingly long portion of the end of the year listening to you know, like the weirdest quasi holiday music I generated. Think I don't know, werewolf themed klezmer reggae fusion,
I love talking about
Hanukkah songs,
This sounds perfect.
and you know,
Daim's
like,
making werewolf themed Hanukkah songs. Andres is summoning fucking demons.
Yes, but the werewolf Hanukkah klezmer songs are kind of my love language. They're my neutral point, to be quite honest. It makes perfect sense. Werewolf. I wasn't expecting you to say werewolf. I was expecting almost everything else on the list, but werewolf. Werewolf threw me off. Threw me totally off balance. I was like, holy fuck.
I have a list of monster slash romance slash comic inconvenience, wrapped all those three things wrapped up, themed, vaguely reggae-ish song list. Stuff like you know, weddings going awry because of werewolf transformation.
Oh, this sounds amazing.
Slender girl, you know, chasing a boy that's not into her, stuff like that.
I kind of need the whole album. I won't lie to you. I need the whole fucking thing. Right to the face.
I'll get it to you. Yeah,
Drop it.
Please,
definitely.
please send it to me. Please.
Yeah,
I've been
for sure.
actually, I've been gravitating towards a werewolf piece based on a few Bloodborne stills, and I'm just like, I don't know where that will take me, but that sounds perfect. Especially because you say like klezmer, right? So it's like I think of like Phrygian dominant for me is like that kind of in between kind of scale where it's kind of sinister but also mystical all at the same time. And to me, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, what does that sound like? But that sounds perfect for what you're doing. I'm just like, oh, I can't imagine. Oh, also, by the way, I have deconstructed the song. It is far beyond my skills to play, but I got the general chord shapes. I think I sent them to you. It's like it's for
Yeah, you
for
mentioned
the
it.
one
You
that we
were
worked on.
investigating it. Yeah.
It wasn't too hard. It was the one thing that GPT-4 got right. Normally it gets things tons wrong, but this, it was like, okay, well, here's the first 30 seconds, and the next one, that's that. Like, there you are. This is the basics. If you wanted to play it, just kind of open with no fuss.
Yeah.
It's not bad at deconstructing things. I don't know if it's great at totally constructing very ambitious things, but it's good. It's
I
good
mean,
to
the problem with it and with most AI models is they have very poor ability to recognize the limits of their their limits in general.
We're not so different, them and I.
Well, no, for sure, but I mean, you look at some piece of writing, and if it's, in a language that you don't speak or in a script you've never seen before, you're not going to start reciting it. On the other hand, like a 3-year-old and AI who probably will, and both will be like super confident that
Oh
they're
my
saying
God,
the
the
stuff that's
confidence
written
is
down.
insulting. It's so
Yeah,
crazy because it's like, I've got this for you. And I'd be like,
yeah.
but for a full narrative, no good. For images, there's enough, it's all pretty cringe, but there's enough raw material there to extract something almost every time. And then I found, for example, I really love themes centered around like perfection and obsession, right? And I like reading them in my fiction, right? So I asked it to
Hmm.
write in a particular universe's language, and it got it totally wrong. But then when I asked, hey, if I wanted to really, really get into this, what would you recommend from, say, I'm a visual person, so what would you recommend from the Criterion Collection about perfection and obsession? And it introduced me to a dozen movies that I'd never seen before that have completely altered my perceptions. Have you seen Mishima? So Paul Schrader, who wrote Taxi Driver, made this incredible film called Mishima, which is all about a Japanese poet philosopher that famously wrangled this. His arc essentially was that he grew up kind of with gender dysphoria and sexuality dysphoria, and that led him later on in life to through his life to become a almost Nobel Prize winning author for Japan, and then it culminated in him kind of investigating masculinity performatively, but it is in a middle ground, and eventually he formed his own little kind of like fascist party within the conservative movement.
Wow.
And ended up being invited by the military to come and like essentially have a whole camp that he could control as this famous personage. And he used that authority to take some sort of minister hostage with his followers, held them hostage in front of the army, made an entire speech in front of the army, and then committed seppuku. And this was all in like 1970 something. So this movie is essentially charting that journey visually through tracts from each of the novels turned into incredible, each of this guy's novels into incredible set pieces, music. The music was so good, it was actually used very famously in that Jim Carrey movie, the kind of Gnostic one about where the guy is trapped in a television show from birth and he's
Truman
trying to
Show?
find his path. Yes, Truman Show. Truman Show uses the music, and it actually comes from this other movie. So this one movie rippled into something even more powerful afterwards. But this movie Mishima is gorgeous. You might even be able to find it on YouTube for free. It's beautiful and it's jarring, and I like what it has to say about meditations on masculinity, and I'm still kind of lost as to whether that final suicide of this character was a rebuke of traditional like perfect traditional masculinity in Japan, and it's kind of like and what his suicide and taking that mantle up meant for that image. But that's it's a crazy hole to jump into. I'd recommend it to all you guys. It's an incredible movie, and Paul Schrader is now one of my favorite writers because of the way that he goes about storytelling and how he even teaches it. I think he's still alive.
You're gonna have to come in the pod and just give us a movie review every week or a movie recommendation.
Gonna slowly lose my mind and ramble about films I only know surface level details about.
Gentlemen, I have to bounce. Y'all can stay on if you'd like. We can go. Totally up to you. 1:15. We've been here for 75 minutes. What do you think? About that
Yeah,
time?
yeah. I think I'm gonna head out. Gotta feed my my 3-year-old.
All right. Well,
It's
you
good.
guys all have a great day. Andre,
Can I make one more recommendation if you want to just like twist your mind up into knots this weekend?
quickly?
So Mishima, and then another movie which is free on YouTube, rated R, called Holy Motors, is a French film. Very surreal, very weird, very beautiful. I'd recommend both of those if you want to just come out of this weekend going like, I what am I doing? I can do more. They're very good films. Very good films.
Hell yeah.
Sweet.
Well, got a couple of movies to watch. Andres is going to go summon some demons. Renee's going to vibe code. Diane's going to feed a 3-year-old Anubis. Hope he gets on a rock wall.
You said the same thing 4 times. It's crazy.
Thank you guys so much for being with us. Gentlemen, I appreciate it. We'll be back next week. I'm going to